Hello, my name is Rudy McGowan, and this is Ryan Oldfield, my close friend, and also our special guest today on the Forthefanspodcast. Ryan Oldfield grew up a Utah Jazz fan, which is a team that is not very well known within the area, I would feel like. So it'll be interesting to listen to him as we sit down and talk about the Jazz today. With that, Ryan, how did you become a Utah Jazz fan?
So, the thing is, I really didn't get into the NBA, from birth. That was more me with, the NFL, with me becoming a Jets fan. But, I ended up getting into the NBA through 2K and one of my friends who happened to be a Jazz fan. So I was like, all right, well, the Nets don't have a pick for the next 15 years at the time. So I'm just going to hop on this bandwagon.
That is actually an interesting story. I can somewhat relate with my personal story becoming a Lakers fan because my dad bought me NBA 2K13 and just told me to pick a random team on the game. I saw that some dude's name was World Peace and I thought that was funny. And that's how Meta World Peace made me a Lakers fan. But I can get that because it feels like a lot of people don't really get involved into being...
Wait, so you weren't a Lakers fan because of Kobe?
I started out being a Lakers fan because of Meta initially, and then realized how good Kobe was. I know, that sounds dumb, but I guess we will move on from that conversation. But yeah, so that's a really, really interesting story in how you can become a fan of a team, just randomly pick them on 2K. I feel like I've kind of done this. I personally did the same thing. So with that, I feel like the number one storyline that can come across with this Jazz team is that the Jazz are a team, they need to get over the hump. They've been in the playoffs for so many years now, but it just feels like they come down short almost every single year. You could even go back to the 90s with Jordan and that, but...
Don't bring up the trauma, please.
But, even with this era's Jazz team with Gobert and Mitchell and all of them, I feel like they're trying to get over this hump every year. And it's not easy to get over the hump in the NBA. You will see tons of teams where they have to take out this star and they try and try and try and it never happens. You can look at the Pacers with Paul George and try and take out LeBron, or Houston back when they had to take out Golden State and they were just never able to do it. And as a result, now they're sitting in mediocrity because they tried to take out this. They had to take out the star team, and as a result, it just never happened. That's a storyline of the NBA.
Or to tie it back to the team we're talking about, us with Houston at the time, as well as Golden State, and now with the Lakers and all that.
Yeah, definitely.
Over the past 5 years.
So, with that being the case, the other night, the Jazz, first of all, they played against the Suns. Do you have any big opinions or takeaways from that game?
I think it was a pretty close game where it's you had some pretty good scoring outings from guys like Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, and Hassan Whiteside, which it's really good to see guys step up when guys like Gobert and Mitchell really aren't playing. So. At the end of the day, seeing that is good, and we still kept it relatively close with one of the best teams in the league, proving still how good we are as a team. At the end of the day, there's still a reason why we were the 1 seed last year. We've been a playoff team for the past 5 years now.
Yeah, I think it would be about that. You go back to Gordon Hayward and those teams.
Don't bring up that trauma either.
With Gordon Hayward, shout out Butler University, which is where we're shooting this from, by the way. And Gobert, a young Gobert, and some of those guys and those defensive teams. This team has evolved over the years, but it feels like you're kind of going from that to what it is now.
We've evolved from the whole. We've kind of centered it around Gobert inadvertently because we tried it with Hayward, and now we're doing it with Mitchell. But Gobert's been that main piece with all which. At the end of the day, I think he's a really good piece, and I know one of the things we want to talk about were strengths and weaknesses, and we'll get on that later.
Yes, but first of all, the next question was, they played the Grizzlies the other night, and that one seemed a little bit less favorable of an outcome for Utah, even though they lost both games than the Suns.
The scoring there, that was more spread across, but at the end of the day, we did have a better game against Phoenix. So sometimes you're going to have those off nights, but then again, Daniel House of all people went off for 21 points. So at the end of the day, I don't know what to say.
Scoring can really come from anywhere in professional basketball. I mean, you don't really know exactly who's going to score all the points.
I mean, Terrence Ross went off for 50 points one time.
Yeah. I mean, was that with Toronto?
That was with Toronto. Yeah.
That was with Toronto. Yes. I feel like, especially you can have these guys who will come in and they'll have these really, really big games. I mean, the Kelly Olynyk game with Boston in the playoffs a couple of years back. If you remember that, back when Boston was Isaiah Thomas with them, and Kelly Olynyk dropped 37 points to beat the Wizards.
But at the end of the day, I think we're getting a bit sidetracked here.
Yes, I would certainly say that. But the next thing is, we should go into some strengths and weaknesses of this team. Because if this team is to get over the hump, I feel like this team should know exactly what their strengths and their weaknesses are. So going into some strengths, I mean, the first thing that I would say is offense, in particular, three-point shooting.
Yeah, I think over the past couple of years, the Jazz have become a great offensive team, which you can't really say the same about the days with, earlier in Rudy Gobert's career and Gordon Hayward. But yeah, over the past couple of years, Quinn Snyder has really been able to ramp up the offense, ramp up the three-point shooting, and turn the Jazz into an offensive juggernaut. It was one. If you looked at it a couple years back and you saw that, and I think it was in 2022 that it would be the number one defensive team versus the number one offensive team between the Jazz and the Warriors. You'd think Jazz would be number one defense and Warriors would be number one offense, but that ended up flipping, which, Jazz are still a top tier defense, Warriors still a top tier offense, but you would think it's the other way around.
Yes. So the next thing that I want to discuss is just playoff Mitchell. Because I feel like Donovan Mitchell goes to a whole nother just realm of player when he enters the playoffs. I mean, I feel like you could say okay, Donovan Mitchell is a 25 point per game scorer, but then he goes into the playoffs and you're just seeing these crazy 40-point games.
40 point, 50 point, 55. Playoff Mitchell is a different beast. Yeah. Bona fide superstar, one of the league's best in the playoffs.
I would certainly agree. I mean, during the regular season, you can debate his superstardom, but Donovan Mitchell is
Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs is the last person you want to be guarding.
I would think either Mitchell or playoff LeBron, but it's pretty close. Or Durant.
In terms of playoff LeBron, he is a more physical specimen. Yeah, he's bigger, he's beefier. But at the end of the day, I think Mitchell is an overall scarier scorer in the playoffs than LeBron.
Yes, you could make
I think
that
he's
argument.
the scariest scorer in the playoffs.
Yeah, Mitchell in the playoffs. I mean, you look at that Denver series, even the Clippers series last year, where he was hurt and he was just dragging that.
Oh yeah, Mitchell in the playoffs is a genuine horror movie character, genuine serial killer.
He's just
ruthless.
He's
absolutely ruthless.
You see the finishes that he makes down low. In those playoff games, and you see the amount that he gets beat up, but he just keeps on coming at you, and he just keeps on dropping buckets. Donovan Mitchell is special.
Oh, and
especially in playoff time. So that has to be a strength. So then the next strength that I'd like to discuss would be the star center of the team, Rudy Gobert. And I mean, you have to admit, the shot blocking as a whole is definitely...
Rudy Gobert is why the Jazz's defense is good. I'm going to be blunt with you. Rudy Gobert is the Jazz's defense. And because of how good of an interior defender is, where it's just hey, we're going to funnel you to Rudy. Try it if you can. Survive if we let you. Gobert is... Honestly, I think without Gobert, the Jazz would probably be an 8th seed.
Yeah, I'd probably say that. Rudy Gobert this year has had a season that to analytics people is being considered somewhat of an MVP caliber season, even though he's not even going to get that hype because he is Rudy.
At the end of the day, Gobert should have at least 4 Defensive Player of the Years back to back. He has 3. And he got robbed of being the first guy in decades to get 3 back to back.
And that was Antetokounmpo who won that one?
I think it was Giannis.
Yes, I would. Yeah, now I'm thinking about it, I think it is Giannis. So with that, talking about Rudy's strengths, I say we should now move on to some weaknesses. But what I would say about that is
I think we got to go back to the defense. I'm going to cut you off there, but I think we're on the same page here. Because at the end of the day, while Rudy Gobert makes up our defense and it is a huge strength, at the end of the day, it is exposed in the playoffs. So you saw the Clippers series. It hurt my soul to see just 5 men out of the perimeter and Gobert just on an island being stranded, calling for help. SOS, somebody help me. And Quinn Snyder not doing a damn thing about it.
That has to say
And
something
I
about him
think
as a coach.
at the end of the, we'll get there. I think we need better perimeter defenders. We have Rolls Royce, we have Royce O'Neal, but besides Royce, we don't have any like great perimeter defenders, and that is like a huge weakness.
I would agree with that. I think that the perimeter defense of Utah is the reason why they're able to expose Rudy, because the Jazz's defense and Quinn Snyder's system is to funnel everything into Rudy, and that's just pretty evident. But then, like, you can go in the playoffs, you can do things such as going 5 wide, and it's not necessarily that they're exposing Rudy Gobert; it's that they're exposing the other 4 guys on the floor who just are not very good perimeter defenders.
Because at the end of the day, if you have perimeter defenders around Gobert, it's fine. It's fine.
And those guys won't be letting
the Jazz could have won the championship last year if we had better perimeter defenders, and I'm going to stick by this argument.
I think that, like, with the Jazz and perimeter defense, I think that it is a factor, because last year in that series, you're not letting those guys go past. If you guys were not letting the Clippers players go past them in that series, I feel like that series could have turned out a little bit differently. I don't think that I think some of it obviously goes on Gobert, but I don't think that most of it does. So with that, the next thing that I want to bring up is a lack of 100% definitive end of conversation star power. Like, I'm talking like Giannis, Kawhi, LeBron, like dudes who it's like, that is 100% the guy. Because I feel like, especially out of all of the last NBA finals to pretty much have been played, there is a guy on pretty much every single one of those teams who is a top 5 player in the NBA. And maybe Mitchell can hit that eventually, but for right now, I think that might be a conversation in which you might have to have. So what is your opinion on that?
Here's why you're wrong.
I respect this.
So, at the end, you're talking about bona fide, genuine star power.
Yes.
At the end of the day. As we know, last season the Jazz were the best regular season team in the league. Agreed?
Yes.
Yes. As we discussed, playoff Mitchell, different breed, probably not of this earth. Agreed?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I think it's not that it's a weakness. I mean, like teams like the Bad Boys, Pistons, back in 2004 were able to win a chip. It's just, I think, once again, we're talking about that perimeter defense. I don't think we need another star. I think we're fine with the 2 stars we have. I think it's just supporting cast. If we have an improved supporting cast, with some stuff we'll talk about in a bit, I don't think star power is an issue. I don't think it's an issue.
You can say that because Mitchell does reach that different breed in the playoffs
When it matters,
that we
yes.
have seen him do in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to bring that up because I felt like it was something that could be brought up.
And I had to prove you wrong.
Exactly. So with that, the next thing that I want to discuss, this is more of like a futures conversation, but it is the fact that a lot of guys on this team who are not named Donovan Mitchell are older guys. So you're discussing a shorter window because of the fact that these guys are older. I mean, versus Phoenix, a team like the Suns, where it's like, with the exception of Chris Paul, everyone else who's on that team, Ayton, Bridges, Booker, they'll be all around for many, many years to come. You don't necessarily have that with Utah. So while it's not an immediate issue, the fact that the team is older around Mitchell, it's something that prevents the lengthiness of your window that other teams may have as an advantage.
And to counteract that, I think something that we've seen with the Jazz's front office is that there are very few times where we have to rebuild The Jazz are a team that is known for reloading and restructuring the roster so that window gets extended. So it's like the last time that the Jazz were bad it was the early 2010s, around 2010 to 2015.
Yes.
Towards the end of that, they were starting to creep into the playoffs. With the 10th seed, trying to get to that 8th seed, and they almost did in the 2016 season. Kobe's last season, and it's not that like the Jazz have a short window. Like if they weren't a good front office and they didn't know how to reload, yes, it's a short window. But they are a team that is known for being able to reload and at least stay relevant. So I think they don't have a short window because of that.
I think the front office will be able to deal with those issues.
I think they've proven it time and time again.
Which I would actually agree with you upon. I was just more discussing the current roster as it stays how it is. Versus discussing, yes, I think the guys in the Jazz front office have demonstrated time and time again that they are willing to do whatever they need in order to compete. And they are clearly one of the better front offices in the NBA, as you can see, because Utah, it seems like, is always pretty much relevant, even going back. So I think, like, the front office being able to make those deals and make stuff happen to the extent where they can turn what is currently kind of an older team into eventually what will be a younger team around Mitchell years into the road is something that I do believe that Utah can make happen. So the next thing that I wanted to discuss is, what are your opinions on Quinn Snyder? Because I feel like he's like a big factor among this team. I mean, some people will come out and praise him and they will say that he's a strength, and then other people see more of his flaws and they'll demonstrate Quinn as being a weakness. I personally will just be honest. I think he falls into both categories of a strength and a weakness. He's a great coach who has been great during the regular season, but in order to get over the hump, he needs to adjust a little bit of his system. I compare him to Mike Budenholzer, would probably be my comparison. I think he's a better coach than Coach Bud as a whole, but I do think that Snyder will need to adjust a little bit of his coaching style if he wants to truly get where he needs to get to. So I'm wondering, would you say that you agree with that?
Here we go. Honestly, I kind of see your point where it's like he's a very good overall coach. Like, he got robbed of Coach of the Year in the past. But at the same time, his adjustments sometimes aren't the best. And that's something he does have to work on. Even in the playoffs, over a series of multiple games, he failed to adjust to a 5-wide, 5-out.
With the Clippers.
Exactly. It's stuff like that where it's it's a big problem when it comes to the playoffs, but in the regular season, it doesn't really matter as much. Where it's that can kind of be overlooked now, but come time, to go up against a team like the Clippers again, or just another great 3-point shooting team. Stuff like that that's Quinn Snyder's weakness.
He needs to be able to figure that out, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that will be the thing, that if he's able to figure that out, that could push the Jazz to the top. Which is why I was making the Budenholzer comparison, because it was pretty much the exact same thing with Giannis getting exposed by the wall.
Until he got that ring.
Until he got the ring, which was because Coach Bud decided to do a couple of adjustments, such as playing certain guys in different positions. So at that point, you could discuss the similarities between those two. It's really, can Utah reach the level that Milwaukee has? But I feel like the coaches being kind of similar in that way of questionable adjustments at times that make you think they aren't as good as they are, but they're great in the regular season, so they have things that back up what they say. So you can go either way on that, regardless. Yeah. I think the next conversation should be the other piece on this team that is very, very much debatable, which is Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is best some people think is practically a top 7 player in the NBA. And then some people at his worst think he's like the most overrated player in the NBA today. I think it's somewhere in the middle of those two. I wouldn't say I'm like a Rudy Gobert stan or anything, but I wouldn't also consider myself like a hater of him. I think he brings very good things onto the floor. So with him, I feel like he is a great talent, first of all. He carries the Jazz's defensive system when it comes to getting people into the paint and having Rudy challenge them at the paint. I feel like people could say like, oh, another center could do that, but I just don't think that that's the case because of how good Rudy is with shot blocking. But then the thing is, it is true that when it comes to those 5-out perimeter sets, that Rudy does get exposed in the playoffs from time to time, which could be due to him, or you could say it's due to the perimeter defense from the other 4 guys on the floor, regardless of what your thoughts are on that.
And I think
Ryan, what do you think?
I think I already touched on this, where he is our defense, but at the end of the day, Quinn's not being able to adjust to stuff like a 5-out set. It exposes him and it ruins fan opinion. Rudy, we all know, is one of the best centers. Someone who should have made it over Andrew Wiggins for an All-Star starter.
Yes, we can discuss that.
We will
discuss that.
Yes, we will.
Rudy was definitely snubbed when it comes to Wiggins. I mean, I feel like there were a couple guys in that conversation.
Yeah, guys
personally,
Cat
Wiggins should have not gotten it over. Karl Anthony Towns, his ex-teammate in Minnesota, would probably be the most comparable option. But when it comes to Gobert and just the level of statistical season that he's putting on, well, that wouldn't be the same position, Lucas.
Well, I know, not the same position, but I mean, we're, with people getting snubbed.
Yes,
yeah,
I would agree with that. But with Wiggins, it's kind of like, I feel like Gobert with like the analytical great season that he's putting on, and the fact that he's leading the league in rebounding should definitely be another part of that conversation. And is he leading the league in shot blocking or in shots blocked per game?
I can double check that for you, but probably. But yeah, it's like, and Andrew Wiggins is getting this, accolade because of a fan vote, and
it's Miles Turner. That was what I thought. Go Pacers. But yeah, I feel like a lot of that has to do with the fan vote and the fact that Golden State or San Francisco is just such a bigger market than
Golden State
Utah.
has the big fan base from with the build up with Steph Curry and Kevin Durant,
Clay,
Clay too, and Draymond.
Yes.
That all the people that were brought in as bandwagon fans because of how good they got, some of them stuck around. A lot of them stuck around. So, they're still getting, if they want to influence people, hey, I mean, Zaza Pachulia
almost made
the All-Star game.
That 1 year, yeah. I think Golden State, it's just to the amount of how big of a fan base that they are.
Yeah, the fan vote should be abolished because of stupid things like, can I cuss on here?
Depends like the level.
Can I say shit?
Yes.
Yeah, stupid shit like this. Stupid shit like this.
I agree.
Is the reason why the fan vote shouldn't exist ever again.
It definitely favors guys from bigger markets, such as like when Derrick Rose and Carmelo Anthony were leading in voting, even though they should not really even be close to the game this year. I think like when it comes down to it, like you're talking about the simple fact that it incentivizes players from bigger markets and it lets them have way more of an advantage than guys from the smaller markets who are maybe even playing better. I mean, you get things like Zaza Pachulia, Alex Caruso is always in it every year. Even though he is great, I mean, but he shouldn't be close to an all-star game, to be honest. And you get things like Taco Fall.
Taco Fall. I forgot he was a person.
And you get things like people wanted Klay Thompson in the all-star game this year when he's played like 2 games. So I think what it comes down to is...
Did people vote for Obama when his song came out, like his rookie year in the NBA?
I can't confirm that, but I think a lot of people didn't know Mo Bamba as being a basketball player when that song came out. I mean, if you were to go around to like a party and ask a whole bunch of people who Mo Bamba was when that song came out, I think 90% of people would probably say that's the dude who wrote the song. So, I think
I just looked it up right now. When you search up Mo Bamba, the first thing you get isn't even Muhammad Bamba. It's the song Mo Bamba.
Yeah, I
Shit,
could definitely agree with that. I think some people would say something like Mo Bamba was the dude who wrote the song. So I don't think that would have factored as much into fan voting due to the fact that I don't really think people knew who Mo Bamba was. Like, people who were not NBA fans or college basketball fans really knew who Mo Bamba was. Like, your average casual is what I'm talking about at this point. But I think that as a whole, it's like the market issue. It's like big markets versus small markets, and that impacts the voting. Like, I think if you're talking about coaches, if you have the coaches and the players vote, the players voting is a whole nother conversation with Rudy Gobert.
And then the coaches vote for the bench guys.
Yes, but the players voting is a whole nother conversation with Rudy Gobert, because there are rumors that he doesn't get along well with a lot of it.
Yeah, you also got to remember, like, in other leagues, like with the Pro Bowl voting, like I think that's a very player heavy, and if I remember correctly, it was either the Pro Bowl or the All-Pro team, because I remember McAfee was talking. No, it was the Pro Bowl, because McAfee was talking about it. The players vote, and some players they don't even vote for other. Like, they'll vote for the randomest shit.
They vote for like their teammates.
Whether it be their teammates, people who've never played a down in the NFL, dead people.
I don't know if dead people's a legitimate one, but that is funny. So I think that as a whole, it's just like that whole issue with the All-Star game, which is the reason why Rudy Gobert, at the end of the day, got snubbed for Andrew Wiggins. So the next thing that we should bring up is, do you think that the Jazz can win it all as currently constructed?
No, but at the end of the day, they're going to make trades.
So as a whole, we can all agree that the Utah needs to make trades. I mean, it just needs to happen.
Jeremy Grant, Marcus Smart, perimeter defenders. If there is a theme that you are coming out of this with, it is that the Jazz need perimeter defense now, also maintaining three-point shooting. So guys like Jeremy Grant, PJ Tucker, Marcus Smart. Who else? Name off some good perimeter defenders for me. You're the podcast host.
I had Robert Covington.
Yeah, Rocco.
Eric Gordon. And I had Jeremy Grant and Marcus Smart. I think that all those guys are good 3-and-D players and are really good defenders, to the extent that that's the type of talent that the Jazz need to chase after when they are making their decisions in this trade deadline area. I think you need to chase after good perimeter defense, and those guys in particular. I mean, Jeremy Grant, of course, is the dream signing, because he'll give you great perimeter defense and probably 20 a night, which is pretty much a dream for Utah at this point. Robert Covington, although I don't think he's as good as he was in his Philadelphia days, he's still a very, very good player. So you could definitely look at him as an option. Eric Gordon's averaging very nice stats for the Houston Rockets this year, and people around the league have always credited him as an awesome defender. And then Marcus Smart, I think, might be a tad bit overrated for Boston, but at the same point in time, he is known as being a gritty defensive player.
Yes.
Who's willing to take names and things of that.
We forgot to mention Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley would be awesome for Utah.
Yes.
I think having him behind Mike Conley, or you could even want more defense in that front court, and you could run Beverley and Mitchell together, and then have Mike Conley expose second units. I think that might just be a weird way of thinking about it when I'm thinking about it. If you wanted more defense, but you could do something like play those two about an equivalent amount. I think that Patrick Beverley's a gritty guy. He'll go down there. He'll make whatever defensive plays you want him to. Any dude who's a pest to LeBron, you can pretty much say that that'd be a positive for any Western Conference team. I mean, if you know a guy who can mess up with LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George, whoever you send to him, except for maybe when it comes to superstars, maybe Jokic. I don't think he can handle, but Jokic is huge. So and he'll be handled by.
And plus, like, think about it. If we have to deal with both LA teams in the playoffs this year, we got Joe Ingles, who was Paul George's father, and
I do remember that.
and then we'd have Pat. Yeah. Can we talk about more about how Joe Ingles is Paul George's father?
I mean, that 2018 season was funny because you had that Oklahoma City team that just pretty much...
The super team.
Yes.
The three-headed dragon.
The
Carmelo Anthony, Paul George, and Westbrook.
And you pretty much just went in there and beat the crap out of them.
We had a rookie Donovan Mitchell say, hi,
Bye.
bye,
Bye.
bye.
That was hilarious. I mean, I don't think that's as good as the Blazers series with Dame waving off the Thunder after he hit that
But then
shot.
again, you gotta remember, who's the one that went through the adoption paperwork for Paul George?
Joe Ingles. No, I think like both of those two series were funny, and I'm sorry to Thunder fans who are now having to deal with the repercussions.
And Clippers fans that have Paul George, Don't never forget who your main star's father is.
Yeah, I could definitely go with that.
Well, we'll take.
But with that, I have to ask the question about. So, if you make trades, can you go to the finals? Do you think? If you make some of those trades, if you get Grant,
Is the sky blue?
all right. So with that, like, I do. So in your opinion, then you do think that the Jazz can clearly make
Yes.
the championship if they make some trades.
If the Jazz make trades and sign maybe some free agents that could warm the bench for funsies, they can win the championship. Are they the favorites?
No.
Depends on how I'm feeling that day, but they can win it.
Yeah,
They can still technically win it if Quinn Snyder just does a little thing called making adjustments, but yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's say, I do have to ask the interesting question. Let's say that in a world you do flame out this year, what adjustments would you make over the free agent period? I mean, the first thing that should be mentioned is that you guys do have no high draft picks and not a lot of cap space. So are there any guys in that world who you would try to target?
Brody, I have a question. What's been the theme of this episode so far?
Perimeter defense.
Yep.
So in that case, the names that I have down here
Because we have zero cap space.
are PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, and Jeremy Grant. Pretty much exact ahead for the trade targets because I think that those
Because trades still exist too.
Could
you can
be-
still trade in the offseason.
yes. Jeremy Grant, of course, would be more of a trade target than anything. But the other two you get for an MLA, of course, PJ Tucker, Covington, you get them in on a mid-level exception, and that definitely helps your defense. So I think that is definitely the right answer would be just perimeter defenders. And I'm wondering, are there any particular perimeter defenders that you would like?
I think we've mentioned just about all the good ones that are realistic.
Yes. Because with the Jazz not having...
Because it's not like we're getting LeBron and bringing him back to his 2012, 2013 form.
Exactly. The Jazz do not have the cap space for that.
We don't have the cap space, and the assets we have, we gotta use wisely.
Yes, I would certainly agree with that with Utah and the fact that they need to use their assets well, especially with them not having the high draft picks next year. What is your opinion about the draft pick situation? Or does that scare you at all, or no?
No. When was the last time the Jazz had a good draft pick?
Donovan Mitchell?
No, I'm talking about high draft pick.
Oh, like...
Dante Exum.
That was bad.
That was the last time we had a high draft pick. Dante Exum.
And then, I mean, he was never really panned out for the team.
If you have a good enough front office, lottery picks don't mean a thing. They can help a lot. You know, guys like LeBron were lottery picks, of course. But they are not the be-all, end-all.
That is
I mean,
true.
the 2019 Raptors did not have a single team member who was a lottery pick. They were all picked outside the top 14.
I thought Kawhi was 14.
He was 15.
Yeah.
That because he was picked 15 with the Pacers. Then went to the Spurs because Pacers front office, and the rest is history.
Yeah. As a Pacers fan, I don't like to discuss the Kawhi Leonard for George Hill trade, but that's kind of regardless. So in that world,
I love George Hill.
You're gonna have to talk about the
you
next.
Know why I love George Hill?
Why
Because this is actually Jazz related. 2016 season.
Yeah, he was great for Utah.
Yeah, he put up like 16 a game, and then he went to Sacramento, and
that just didn't
no
work
one
out.
ever heard of him ever again.
Well, he was good for the Pacers, and he was good for.
He was good for the Pacers, good for the Jazz, good for the Spurs.
He just
Anywhere
was
else, not really.
He was never really.
He was a good role player for the Bucks.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, but he was not that great in Sacramento.
Yeah, he wasn't like a 16-point per game scorer.
So my next question is, what happens? And this is like a definite worst case scenario type of situation. What happens if you flame out like 3 more years in a row?
I don't know.
Are you talking like a Gobert trade? Are you talking
Possibly,
sell off?
depending on age and contract. I have no clue. It could be firing Quinn. It could. I know one thing and one thing only that won't happen. A Donovan Mitchell trade, because I swear to God, if that happens,
he will be very, very sad. I think that when it comes to a Donovan Mitchell trade, the only way that you would ever trade Donovan Mitchell if you were the Utah Jazz, of course, is if he sits out, which I don't expect him to do, knowing how good
and plus he loves the Jazz. He loves the organization, and he's basically said that he wants to be there for life.
Yes, I think that the only way in which you would ever consider trading Donovan Mitchell would be him like asking out. I think if you were to say like what you would consider doing, it'd be Rudy Gobert maybe gets traded, cap space, maybe you're clearing out some veterans, maybe like you trade a Clarkson or you trade a Ingles for if they're still there, of course, for some additional cap space.
Which I assume they'd be.
And then you fire Quinn Snyder. I think at that point we're definitely, if he can't get past that like 3 years down the road, then you definitely have to consider letting him go. So with that being the case, overall what we think about the Jazz is that they can do it.
Make trades for perimeter defenders. They're good.
Yes, they're good, but they do have to make some trades for some perimeter guys who can lock up and then hopefully try to avoid what happened last year in the Clippers series. And with that, that is an episode of For the Fans podcast. We'd just like to tell you a couple of more things before you sign off. If you would like to possibly come onto the show and talk about pretty much anything, your favorite sport, your favorite hobby, whatever, anything that you're really a fan of, all you have to do is go to our Instagram at forthefanspodcast_. And then from there, you can go into our Instagram highlights, and there is a form that you can fill out. In that form, it's about 2 questions, I believe. I think it's your name, your email, or phone number, and also your teams of choice or your things of choice that you want to talk about. Now Ryan's over here just chilling and dancing. You want to, well, let's just dance a little bit. Yeah. Ryan just stopped dancing, guys. It's okay. But with that, I would say that all that I can say to Ryan is good luck on this year's Jazz season. I hope that you guys go all the way, because personally, I'd like to see Mitchell hold up that championship, because I think the city, after so much and what you guys have been through, going back to even like the MJ era, I think it'd be good for Salt Lake City, for the NBA, to be able to finally hold up a championship. So I hope that happens. If this year, maybe next year, just whenever it happens, I hope that it happens and that you're finally able to see that through. So with that, that is the ending of the For the Fans podcast today. But one more thing before we sign off is that we would like to just say, if you would like to subscribe to our channel, it would make a big difference. We're in the beginning of this journey. Ryan is not here with me today. Well, other Ryan. Ryan, our co-host,
I'm
is
not
not
here.
here with me today. Not him. Ryan Patterson is not here with us today. This is Ryan Oldfield, by the way.
Hi.
But
Make sure to also like, comment, share the video, do anything to boost interactions, because
with that, all that I have to say is thank you for being on this, Ryan, and let's go Jazz.
all right.